Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're plunging into a topic that, well, at first glance, it can feel like navigating a dense legal forest,
Uh-huh.
But it's fundamentally about securing your legacy and ensuring your deepest wishes are honored long after you've articulated them.
Mm.
Have you ever pondered how you might leave assets for your loved ones or guarantee a specific purpose is fulfilled in a way that goes far beyond, say, a simple will or a direct gift?
Right, something with more structure.
Exactly. Something that provides a robust structure, maintains control, maybe ensures longevity across generations.
That's precisely where the intricate world of trusts steps in. They are remarkably flexible and powerful legal instruments.
Okay.
And today, our mission is to really peel back the layers, make them completely comprehensible for you. This deep dive is meticulously crafted for someone like you, perhaps encountering trust for the first time in a formal context.
Right. Maybe studying for the bar.
Exactly. Prepping for something as pivotal as a bar exam, or maybe embarking on an important essay where precision and comprehensive understanding are absolutely key.
And our goal isn't just to hand you definitions, is it?
No, not at all. Our real mission is to equip you with a crystal clear analytical framework, a roadmap, if you will, for dissecting and structuring your thoughts on any trust-related issue you might encounter.
Right.
We've meticulously sifted through comprehensive review outlines that lay out the fundamentals and nuances of trust law, extracting the most important insights and maybe some surprising facts, too.
Yeah, so get ready to truly understand the how and why behind these powerful structures, because this is where it gets really interesting. Okay, let's unpack this foundational concept then. When I think of simply giving something away, like a gift, I imagine a straightforward exchange. I hand it to you and boom, it's yours, done.
Symbol transfer.
But a trust, however, seems far more involved, almost like a financial arrangement with multiple moving parts.
Right.
What's the fundamental idea that sets it apart from just a simple gift?
You've hit on the critical distinction right there. The core concept of a trust is what we call a bifurcated transfer of property.
Bifurcated transfer, okay?
Yeah. Think of it this way. Instead of a single direct line of ownership, we split it. We split it into two distinct paths.
Two paths.
Two paths. The property itself, let's imagine a classic family estate, perhaps the Sterling Family Trust we can use as our running example today, set up by matriarch Eleanor Sterling.
Okay, Eleanor Sterling, got it.
So Eleanor decides to set aside a significant portion of the family assets, but she doesn't get them outright to her grandchildren immediately. Instead, she wants to ensure their long-term well-being and education.
Right, a longer-term goal.
Exactly. So she sets up this trust. One path, the legal title to those assets, that's the right to manage, protect, and control them, goes to one party. Let's say Sterling Bank and Trust in our example.
Okay, the bank gets the legal control.
Yep. And the other path, the equitable title, that's the right to benefit from that property, to receive income from it, or eventually the principal. That goes to a different party, her grandchildren.
Ah, so it's like Eleanor giving the keys to her family's financial future to a trusted institution, Sterling Bank and Trust, to manage on behalf of her grandkids,
Right.
rather than just handing a large sum of money directly to them right now.
Precisely.
The bank holds the legal authority to manage it, but it's unequivocally for the grandchildren's ultimate benefit.
That analogy perfectly captures the essence. Sterling Bank and Trust is our trustee, holding the legal title and the responsibility for stewardship.
Stewardship, yeah.
And the grandchildren are the beneficiaries, holding the equitable interest. This separation, this bifurcation, is the absolute bedrock upon which every trust is built. It ensures a layer of management and protection for the assets.
Okay, so if that's the core idea, who are the essential players in this setup? You mentioned the creator, the manager, and the ones who benefit. What are their official trust law titles?
Good question. There are three essential parties to a trust. Although it's a fascinating quirk of trust law that one person can actually wear multiple hats simultaneously.
Oh, really? Like how?
Well, first you have the settlor, sometimes also called the grantor or trustor.
Settler.
This is the individual who creates the trust, the person who initiates the transfer of property into this specialized structure. In our Sterling Family Trust, Eleanor Sterling is the settlor.
The visionary, the one who sets the whole thing in motion.
Exactly. Then we have the trustee. This is the party who holds the legal interest or title to the trust property.
Like Sterling Bank and Trust.
Like Sterling Bank and Trust, their role is absolutely pivotal. They are tasked with managing, protecting, and investing that property, and any income it generates, always for the benefit of the other party.
Right.
Their duties are incredibly significant, and we'll definitely dive into those later. But a crucial point is this. If a settlor, like Eleanor, fails to name a trustee, or if the designated Sterling Bank and Trust were to, say, cease operations,
What happens then?
a court will step in and appoint a new one. A valid trust won't fail simply for lack of a trustee.
That's good to know. So the structure survives. And finally, the person or people who actually benefit from all this careful management. That's the beneficiary, I assume?
Yes, the beneficiary holds the equitable interest in the trust property. They are the person or people for whose benefit the property is held. They must, either expressly or implicitly, accept this interest for it to fully vest.
They have to accept it.
Yeah, they can technically disclaim it if they don't want it.
Mm-hmm.
It's also worth distinguishing here that trust property is typically divided into two categories. The principal, which is the original trust property itself and any increase in its capital value, and the income, which is the money generated by that trust property, like interest, dividends, or rent.
Okay. Principal and income.
That distinction becomes incredibly important when we talk about a trustee's duties later on.
Okay, so we have the settlor, the trustee, and the beneficiary. But what makes a trust valid? Are there non-negotiable must-haves that, if missing, mean it's not actually a trust at all, just, a vague wish or an unfulfilled intention?
Absolutely. Think of these as the fundamental ingredients. Without them, the recipe for a valid trust just won't come together. First, and paramount, is the settlor's intent.
Intent, okay.
The settlor must have manifested a present intention to transfer the property for the specific purpose of creating a trust.
Present intention, not future.
Not future. It can't be a vague, I plan to set up a trust someday. It has to be a current, actionable commitment. Now, this intent can be demonstrated orally, in writing, or even through their conduct.
Oh, so it doesn't always have to be written?
Not always, but there are crucial exceptions where a writing is required. If the trust involves real property, like the Sterling family estate,
Right.
the statute of frauds mandates a written document. And if the trust is created within a will, which we'll discuss as a testamentary trust, the statute of wills must be strictly adhered to. It's also helpful to know that using common trust terms like in trust, for the benefit of, or explicitly naming a trustee creates a strong presumption in law that the settlor intended to create a trust.
Ah, so using those magic words helps.
It definitely helps. This presumption exists to provide clarity and legal certainty, making the settlor's intentions unmistakable to the courts.
So using those specific phrases immediately signals to the court, hey, this isn't just a casual arrangement. This is meant to be a formal trust structure. That's a good shortcut.
Precisely. Next, you need ascertainable beneficiaries.
Ascertainable, meaning you have to know who they are.
Generally, yes. The beneficiaries must be identifiable either by name, like Eleanor's specific grandchildren, or by a clearly defined class so that the equitable interest in the property can transfer automatically to them.
Makes sense. Someone needs to be able to enforce it.
Exactly. This ensures there's a clear, identifiable recipient of the trust's benefit. However, there are fascinating and important exceptions where individually named ascertainable beneficiaries are not strictly required.
Like when?
Well, for trusts benefiting unborn children, for example.
Ah.
Or for a reasonably definite class of people, meaning you can identify who falls within the group even if you don't name every single person individually.
Like my employees?
Potentially, yes, if defined clearly enough. Or for charitable trusts, which have their own unique rules and a much broader scope. This flexibility allows trusts to serve broader public purposes beyond specific individuals.
Okay. What about the property itself? Can it be just any asset, or does it have to meet certain criteria?
Not just anything. It must be trust property, often called the res or corpus.
The res, R-E-S.
Correct, R-E-S. It must be identifiable, clearly segregated from other assets, and described with reasonable certainty.
Segregated. Why is that so important?
Well, this is a critical distinction that really sets a trust apart from a mere debt. With a debt, the payment can come from any of the debtor's sources, right?
Any money they have.
But with a trust, the funds or assets are specific, set aside, and dedicated solely to the trust's purpose. The trust must also be funded at its creation.
Funded. Meaning it has to have something in it from day one.
Exactly. It must contain some property that was genuinely owned by the settlor at the time and effectively transferred into the trust. A common misconception is that you can declare a trust over property you don't yet own, or property that is merely an expectation, like an inheritance you hope to get.
So you can't set up a trust for lottery winnings you haven't won yet.
Afraid not. If a trust is initially invalid because it lacked assets, it can become valid later if the settler clearly shows an intent to recreate the trust and then funds it with actual property. But that remanifestation of intent is key.
So no empty trusts hoping to be funded later without that clear remanifestation of intent.
Got it. And the purpose. Does it have to be for something generally considered good, or can it be for anything at all, even something quirky?
The trust must have a valid trust purpose. This means it absolutely cannot be illegal, restricted by law, or contrary to established public policy.
Okay, no trusts for criminal enterprises. Definitely not. It also must be practically possible to achieve and fundamentally for the benefit of its beneficiaries. Now, a fascinating point here is what happens if a trust contains several terms and only one violates public policy.
Does the whole trust fail?
Not usually. In such cases, that problematic term will generally be stricken from the trust, allowing the rest of the trust to stand. The entire trust will only fail entirely if removing that single term makes the trust's core purpose impossible to achieve. This shows the law's preference for upholding the settler's overall intent where possible.
Okay, that makes sense. Preserve what you can. It sounds like there are a lot of intricate nuances that differentiate trusts from other legal concepts we might already know. Can you give us a quick rundown of how a trust fundamentally differs from, say, a straightforward gift?
Absolutely.
And what exactly is a precatory trust? That sounds like it's walking a very fine line between a wish and a legal obligation.
It really is. Let's clarify these common points of confusion. The absolute key distinction between a trust and a gift is in the nature and permanence of the transfer. A gift is a present, outright, and generally irrevocable transfer of property.
Right. You give it, it's gone.
Exactly. Once it's given, it's done.
Yeah.
The donor typically has no further control, interest, or responsibilities. A trust, as we've established, involves that unique bifurcated transfer. The settler gives property to one party, the trustee, specifically for the benefit of another, the beneficiary, establishing a set of ongoing obligations, duties, and a framework for long-term management. It's about stewardship, not just immediate transfer.
So with a gift, it's a one-and-done transfer, but a trust sets up a whole system of management and benefit with a clear purpose in mind.
Precisely. Now, precatory trusts, that's a classic area where the settler's intent gets put under a microscope.
Precatory, from pray or wish.
Exactly. This scenario arises when a donor uses language that expresses a hope, a desire, or a wish, rather than a clear, legally binding command or obligation that the property be used for another's benefit.
I wish my niece would use this money for college.
Exactly. Think of phrases like, I wish that this money be used for my niece's college tuition, or I hope that you will use these funds to care for my beloved pets after I'm gone. The question for the court becomes, was this just a suggestion or a true binding instruction?
And how do they decide?
For such hopeful language to be treated as a trust and thus legally enforceable, two conditions generally must be met. First, the transfer must contain specific instructions to a fiduciary indicating that the recipient is meant to act as a trustee with clear guidance.
Okay, not just a vague hope.
Right. And second, it must be shown that without imposing a trust, there would be an unnatural disposition of the donor's property.
Unnatural disposition, what does that mean?
It often involves delving into the personal relationship dynamics, examining familial ties, previous patterns of financial support between the donor and the intended beneficiary, or unique circumstances that suggest the donor really meant for this arrangement to be legally binding, despite the soft language.
So, like, if Eleanor always supported her struggling nephew and then left money to her wealthy brother, hoping he'd help the nephew, the court might say, yeah, that looks like she intended a trust.
That's exactly the kind of reasoning a court might use. It's all about discerning whether the donor truly intended to create a binding obligation, even if they used gentle phrasing.
So once we've established what makes a trust valid, it's clear there isn't just one type. It seems there are many different flavors, as you put it, each with its own nuances. How do we keep them straight? Because I can imagine on an exam or in real life, you need to know exactly which flavor you're dealing with.
Oh, absolutely.
And different rules will apply, right?
Yeah. You've highlighted a truly crucial point. Correctly characterizing the type of trust is often the very first and most important step in analyzing any trust-related issue. Because, yeah, different types of trusts are governed by fundamentally different rules and come with distinct advantages or limitations.
Okay, so where do we start?
Let's break them down. We'll start with express trusts. These are those explicitly stated and intentionally created by the settler.
Okay, so these are the on-purpose trusts, the ones set up with clear intent. like Eleanor setting up the Sterling Family Trust.
Precisely. A private express trust clearly states the settler's intention to transfer property to a trustee for the benefit of one or more ascertainable beneficiaries. It requires all the elements we just discussed: a settler with legal capacity, present intent, identifiable property, a trustee with duties, ascertainable beneficiaries, and a valid purpose.
All those ingredients.
All those ingredients. And interestingly, no consideration or payment is required for its creation, unlike a contract.
Right, it's not a bargain.
Exactly. Within express trusts, we primarily distinguish between inter vivos trusts and testamentary trusts.
Inter vivos, meaning?
Inter vivos trusts are lifetime transfers. They become effective during the settler's lifetime.
Among the living.
Exactly. For instance, if Eleanor Sterling declares herself as the trustee of the Sterling Family Trust, a simple written declaration of trust is usually enough. But if she names Sterling Bank and Trust as the trustee, she must physically deliver the property to them, parting with her dominion and control over it.
Okay, actual delivery is key for a third-party trustee.
Yes. For personal property, like stocks or cash, no writing is required to transfer it into an inter vivos trust, though, frankly, a writing is always advisable for clarity.
Good practice, yeah.
Definitely. However, for real property, like that family estate, a writing is absolutely mandatory due to the statute of frauds.
We keep coming back to that.
It's fundamental for real estate. If a writing is lacking for real property where one is required, a court might still impose a constructive trust to prevent unjust enrichment, but it's far from ideal. Also, parole evidence, that's evidence outside the written agreement, is only admissible to show the settler's intent if the written agreement itself is ambiguous. The law really prefers clear written terms.
So an inter vivos trust is essentially a trust for the living, active right away. Are there specific types of inter vivos trusts that are particularly important or commonly used? I feel like I've heard some specific names thrown around.
Yes, there are several important variations that you'll definitely encounter. First, the pour-over trust.
Pour-over? Like pouring coffee?
Sort of. It's a provision in a will that directs property from the testator's estate to pour over into an existing trust upon the testator's death.
Oh, I see. So the will fills up the trust.
Exactly. This is an incredibly elegant and useful solution because it allows a will to distribute assets to a pre-existing trust without having to rewrite the trust's entire, often lengthy and complex terms directly into the will itself.
That makes a lot of sense for efficiency and privacy, right? Because the will becomes public record.
Precisely. The trust document itself doesn't become public record through probate. And it offers flexibility, as the trust can be amended during life without constantly amending the will. It's permissible, even if the trust instrument wasn't executed under the stringent formalities of the statute of wills, as long as the trust is identified in the will and its terms are set forth in a written instrument executed before or concurrently with the will.
Okay, pour-over trust. Very handy. What else falls under this inter vivos umbrella?
Then there's the Totten Trust, which is quite unique.
Totten Trust. Sounds specific.
It is. It presents an apparent paradox in our definition of a trust. There's no true separation of legal and equitable title, at least not initially. It's a designation given to a bank account in a depositor's name as trustee for a named beneficiary.
Like Eleanor Sterling, trustee for Liam Sterling.
Exactly like that. During Eleanor's lifetime, she essentially holds both legal and equitable title. She maintains complete control over the account, can withdraw funds, and even revoke the trust simply by withdrawing all the money or changing the beneficiary.
So it's basically her money until she dies.
Pretty much. It's fully revocable by any lifetime act showing her intent to revoke, or even by a specific provision in her will. It acts almost like a poor man's will for that specific bank account, becoming fully effective only upon the depositor's death.
So Eleanor can set up a bank account for her grandson Liam, name herself as trustee, and it functions like a trust for him upon her death, but she still controls it entirely, like her own money, until then. That's quite the paradox. How does that work in practice? Doesn't it fundamentally contradict the idea of legal and equitable title separation we started with? What's the practical utility?
That's a perceptive question, and it gets to why it's a special type, often tested. While it lacks that immediate, complete bifurcation of legal and equitable title we talked about,
Right.
its utility lies in its simplicity and revocability. It provides an easy, low-cost way to transfer small bank accounts to a designated beneficiary upon death without going through the formal probate process.
Avoids probate. That's a big plus.
A huge plus for simple transfers. The funds pass directly to the beneficiary by operation of law. The trust aspect kicks in fully upon the depositor's death when the beneficiary's interest becomes absolute.
Okay, makes sense for that specific purpose. What else?
Next, we have the life insurance trust. Here, the proceeds from a life insurance policy are directed to the trust upon the insured's death.
So the trust gets the payout, not an individual.
Exactly. In this arrangement, the trust itself actually owns the insurance policy. These trusts are typically irrevocable.
Irrevocable. So once Eleanor transfers the policy.
She generally can't get it back or change its terms unilaterally. This irrevocability can provide specific estate tax advantages or ensure that the policy proceeds are managed for minors or, say, spendthrift beneficiaries according to Eleanor's precise instructions, rather than being paid out in a lump sum.
Okay, and you mentioned living trusts earlier.
Yes, the living trust. This is when a settlor, like Eleanor, names themselves as trustee during their lifetime. Then, upon their death, a successor trustee takes over to manage and distribute the assets.
So it continues seamlessly after death.
That's the idea. While it provides for uninterrupted management during life and distribution upon death without the delay and publicity of probate, a crucial point is that during the settlor's lifetime, because Eleanor retains control and the ability to change things,
Right, she's still in charge.
the trust property is generally not protected from her own creditors or from federal estate taxation. It's often used more for probate avoidance than for asset protection during the settlor's life.
That's a critical distinction. Okay, so those are trusts created while someone is alive? What about trusts that only kick in after someone dies, literally arising from their final wishes?
Those are testamentary trusts. They are created by the terms of a will, or by a document that is incorporated by reference into a will.
Okay, part of the will itself.
Exactly. Because they are part of will, they must comply with the strict formalities of the statute of wills, proper witnessing, signing, all of that.
Makes sense.
If they don't, they might still be recognized, but potentially only as a remedial trust, depending on whether they're a secret or semi-secret trust, a distinction that often confuses people.
Secret and semi-secret. That sounds less like estate planning and more like something out of a spy novel. What's the practical difference between them, and why does it matter so much in trust law?
It's less about espionage and more about how transparently the testator's intentions are revealed in the will itself. A secret trust looks, on the face of the will, like an outright testamentary gift to a specific individual.
So the will just says, I give X to Y.
Exactly. For example, Eleanor's will might simply say, I leave my rare coin collection to my good friend John Smith. But secretly, Eleanor had an understanding with John, and John promised her that he would actually hold that coin collection and administer it for a third party. Say, Eleanor's estranged nephew, Mark, who she didn't want to name directly in her public will.
Oh, okay, an off-the-books agreement.
Right. Since the will itself doesn't indicate any trust, if John tries to keep the coin collection for himself after Eleanor dies,
Which he might.
then a court will step in and impose a constructive trust on the property for the intended beneficiary, Mark, to prevent John's unjust enrichment. The court essentially enforces the oral promise John made.
So the will just says, I leave my rare coin collection to John Smith, but secretly, John promised Eleanor he'd hold it for Mark.
Yeah.
The court effectively says, John, you can't just keep it. You made a promise.
Exactly. Now, a semi-secret trust is different because the will does indicate that a gift is being held in trust, but the testator fails to name the specific beneficiary or specify the terms or purpose of the trust.
So the will mentions a trust, but doesn't fill in the blanks.
Correct. For instance, Eleanor's will might say, I leave $100,000 to Sterling Bank and Trust, in trust for purposes I've communicated to them, but the will doesn't say for whom those purposes are.
Uh-oh, what happens then?
In this case, since the will clearly acknowledges a trust but it's incomplete, under the traditional common law, a resulting trust is imposed on the property.
Resulting trust, meaning?
Meaning the property reverts back. It's held for the testator's heirs or residuary beneficiaries, as the court won't usually enforce the unstated, unwritten terms due to the statute of wills. The rationale is that the testator clearly did not intend for the trustee, Sterling Bank, to keep the property for itself, so it must go back to the estate.
So if the will says, I leave $100,000 to Sterling Bank and Trust, in trust, but doesn't say for whom, traditionally it just goes back to Eleanor's heirs.
Correct. Now, here's a key takeaway for your studies. While many jurisdictions still respect this common law distinction between secret and semi-secret trusts.
Okay, here's the exam tip.
Exactly. The modern trend, as reflected in the restatement, third of trusts, and increasingly by state statutes, takes a different approach. This modern view posits that if the intended beneficiaries are known and can be proven by clear and convincing evidence,
Even if they aren't named in the will.
even then, if it can be proven, a constructive trust should be imposed in their favor in both secret and semi-secret trust situations. The reasoning is that the overriding goal